Whether your team is your family, your business, or your employees, staying connected is crucial. You can depend on the Cross Insurance family
Very good.
to provide the best insurance solutions for you. We've got your team protected. Visit crossagency.com today.
Hi there. I'm Janelle Manos, business reporter with the Boston Globe, and I'm coming to you live from the Boston Globe newsroom, which is still a little quiet. But I'm here today as part of our Bold Type series to talk with three local leaders who've been helping small businesses navigate the pandemic. And I'm really excited for this conversation in part because I've had a chance to interview these people over the course of this past year. I've been so impressed with the work that they've been doing to help businesses as they've had to sort of slog through these last tough months. And it really came about the work they were doing with some real innovation and brilliant ideas to get folks through these last tough time, and hopefully, navigating the tough months ahead as well. We're going to split this up. I'm going to do three introduction interviews, and then we'll have the whole panel come together to answer some other questions, and we'll do questions from the audience as well. So if you're interested in submitting a question, you can do so using the Q&A function on the Zoom link. The chat function is not going to be in use during this event. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. We're really excited for this, and thank you to Cross Insurance for supporting us. First up, I'm going to introduce Jada Turner, who is the founder and managing director of Black Owned Boss. Hi, Jada. How are you?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming. Well, first off, I wanted to say, you and I first interacted over a year ago when, you were an Instagram account, and I didn't know who you were or anything about it. I knew you were doing the work, but I didn't know who you were, and you weren't quite sure you wanted to tell me. You were still somewhat anonymous at that point in time. Maybe start off, if you could, by talking about, your decision to launch the Instagram account Black Owned Boss, and what it was then at the time, and maybe talk a little bit about how it's evolved over the last year.
Yeah, definitely. So Black Owned Boss, like you mentioned, it started out as an Instagram digital platform. I truly just wanted to create visibility and to kind of just flex some hobbies and personal skills that I was working on, whether it was photography, my marketing background, et cetera. I wanted to kind of channel those into a side project because myself, I'm a Boston native, and I born and raised in Boston, went to school here at Northeastern University. And I definitely kind of felt the disconnect between myself and transplants to Boston that just couldn't find places to support Black-owned businesses. And then also just the general sentiment around various neighborhoods in Boston, specifically some of the ones that I grew up in, Dorchester in particular, and I am currently a Roxbury native. I knew the beauty that lies in all of these neighborhoods and all of the different characters and all of the different businesses that should be supported there. And I wanted to kind of create a more, a more visual aspect to it, to connect these businesses to new customers and to connect and kind of create a digital community around it. So that started in March of 2019. And continued to kind of create community digitally through my own network, encouraging people to follow Black Owned Boss, meeting different people through it, connecting with different business owners just organically, because myself, before even starting this, entrepreneur myself in graphic design and stationery, et cetera, et cetera. So I had already—
This is a side project for you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
This is kind of a passion project, right? Yeah, you were
exactly.
Working. Yeah, exactly.
So it turned into just kind of like an informal platform and community. Fast forward to 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, as we all know, there was this kind of uprising. A lot of people wanted to find ways to connect to Black-owned businesses. They wanted to find ways to incorporate social justice in their own lives, and a lot of that showed up in social media. So I kind of say that Black Owned Boss was just in the right place at the right time with the right resources and look to it, I want to say, because there are a lot of businesses and a lot of pages that either popped up locally or that just didn't have the same kind of reach initially that Black owned boss did. And I guess I attribute it to kind of just putting in the work initially and to kind of make a consistent brand, build community with the people that I knew that were moving the culture forward and doing the work themselves, just so that when that moment came and people were that mainstream focus was on Black owned businesses, there was a destination for people to look to in terms of digital resources and also in-person events that kind of came next. I guess ironically with COVID,
Yeah, I know that
a
was
lot of
that was a
yeah,
big challenge to take on for sure.
exactly.
Yeah.
A lot of large scale events that were vending opportunities for these small businesses and entrepreneurs were being canceled out of safety, which definitely makes sense. But I knew that there was a way to do it safely, and I knew that there was a way to kind of still continue to create these opportunities. So when I got the connection from actually my cousin to start an outdoor market partnership with the Seaport. I jumped on it as an opportunity to create space and provide my own expertise and resources to support something like that. And I guess the rest is history from there.
But yeah, you've been doing these these pop-ups now in several locations. Talk with me a little bit about what that's looked like, how many vendors you've worked with, things along those lines.
Yeah, for sure. So the first initial series was the Outdoor Market Seaport series, and then especially as we know in New England weather, as it gets a little colder, outdoor events aren't the greatest, especially in a pandemic. But then the challenge of hosting indoor events was a part of that as well. So kind of just scoping out different places that had vacancies, doing cold call outreach to see if people are interested in a partnership like this, and to host businesses within the spaces. So those outdoor markets had about 25 vendors. Next, we had a holiday market at Legacy Place Shopping Center in Dedham that had about 12 businesses each day during the weekends during the holiday series. So it was kind of like a rotating collective. And then this year there was around the theme of Valentine's Day, spread love at the South Bay Plaza in Dorchester, which was a 5-week series. And right now we're back at the Seaport for a 6-month installment that'll run through October.
That's great.
So a lot of different.
You were at Bow Market too, right?
Yes, we're at Bow Market. The Bow Market is actually a one-to-one retail incubator. We're working with one business as an extended pop-up to provide kind of one-on-one consulting and retail support to that business as they kind of bridge the gap to their next step of brick and mortar, if that's an interest of theirs.
That's great. So this was a side project for you. I imagine it's taken on a much larger role in your life. Talk with me a little bit about that and how you've navigated that from a personal level.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess a little bit to your question about wanting to remain anonymous.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of it was really I just wanted to do the work. Like I just wanted to do what I was enjoying. I just wanted to continue to support businesses in that way and not really make it about myself, because I think that sometimes things can get lost when you center yourself, when the real work is centering other people and their businesses and their growth. But then I quickly realized that when you don't really have a face associated with something, there's kind of that edge of like credibility. There's that edge of kind of understanding where is that passion coming from, who are the people that are driving this, and kind of where is that coming from. So that gets a little bit of, I guess, skepticism sometimes, but then also a lot of times people don't really want an anonymous a business or anonymous partnership. So that was something that I quickly realized, that I didn't want to stifle the growth of Black Owned Boss by wanting to remain in my turtle shell. So I quickly stepped out of that, and then it has definitely become a full-time project for me. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was actually furloughed from my job, and I quickly was able to just decide, like, okay, that's how things roll. Things happen for a reason. And I think that this truly happened for a reason, to allow and kind of clear up my schedule and clear up my life to focus on what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah, it's funny how the pandemic in some ways has made that sort of things snap into focus in new ways, and we're better for it, I think, in the case of having you be part of the city and play a much larger role. I want to just talk a little bit too, just about the community that you're driving, because you said like the idea is centering around the work and promoting other people, bringing Black entrepreneurs together, in physical spaces, but also in a digital space. What have you seen come out of those connections and those opportunities just by virtue of having, everyone in the room?
Yeah, I think there's a sense of just belonging and a sense of confidence that comes when you're with other businesses that are doing the work that you're doing, that are experiencing similar challenges as yourself. But
Mm,
then when we all come together in one collective space that maybe one business couldn't afford to be in this space, maybe they couldn't even fill the space with just their products.
mm,
When you come together in these collectives, you're able to share best practices, make community, because being an entrepreneur, especially a solo entrepreneur, it can be very lonely
yeah.
because you're the one focusing on everything. You're the one that's kind of just making things happen until you're able to get to that point that you can scale and have employees or have a larger team. So this kind of community of entrepreneurs is kind of like your colleagues, your people that you can kind of share stories around the water cooler, as you may say it.
That's great. Which I think too, over the past year, like we're also isolated, building that community for people is that much more important. So
Definitely.
that's tremendous. That's great. Well, Jada, I'm gonna give you a break here, and then I'm gonna jump over and we'll talk to Ross for a little bit about what he's been working on with Newmarket, and then we'll have you come back in a few minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Great. Thank you. Ross, do you want to join us? Hi, how are
Janelle,
you? How's
how are
it
you?
going? Good. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. Well, thanks for joining us here. Maybe we can just start off by maybe if you take a few minutes, you can just explain what Newmarket is.
Sure.
Yeah, we can start there.
I'm thinking back to a few months ago when we first talked about it,
Yeah.
right after we launched, and it feels like a lot has changed
It
in some
has.
good ways since then.
Yeah.
But the quick version is that we create community crowdfunding campaigns for independent businesses. And any one of their customers of their community can contribute to that campaign and get that contribution back, plus a little bit of interest as credits to use towards the business over time. So you're
Mhm.
not only supporting a business that you love, you're actually getting more of it back that you can use to help them grow.
And talk with me a little bit about how your model differs from other crowdfunding sources and other things that are kind of out there, various models to help support small business, but how you take a slightly different approach.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two
Excuse me.
major areas in which we're different. The first is that credit-based model, where you as the contributor get something back. It's not a donation, hashtag not a donation, as we sometimes say, just to make sure everyone understands. And then I think the second area is kind of the community support approach we take. So we work very, very hands-on with the business owners who we work with and their champions in the community, and try to get a really great engine of support to push forward that business and help them grow. These credits also are distributed over time, so you get more back if you're a customer. And for the business, you know that you're going to see familiar faces coming through your doors or into your e-commerce account a little more often.
So yeah, the model sort of works like if I put $100 towards this business, then I would get back $120 worth of credits that then would be distributed over the course of like a 6-month period, something like that, where I would go into the store or go online and shop multiple times, so that it's not just a one and done situation, but you're sort of building community, you're building, repetition in, which of course is good for brand and things like that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. More of a local and we'd say sustainable in all forms, that type of engine where you're getting more of something that you really love that is local and is independent.
Talk to me a little bit about the idea for Newmarket. How did you conceive of it, and why did you think it would be a successful model in this space that wasn't being done elsewhere?
Yeah, so the idea kind of came almost a year ago now with COVID and the pandemic, and seeing how so many independent businesses were struggling mightily. I mean, everyone in the world was struggling in some capacity, but independent businesses were really just having a tough time. At the same time, I think all of us as individuals and as members of various communities really wanted to do something to help, something meaningful. And we were buying gift cards, we were tipping delivery drivers more, we were putting up Instagram posts. No one really knew what to do.
Yeah.
And that's where the idea for New Market came from, that we could create a meaningful connection through a more inclusive funding process for these businesses. And I say inclusive in kind of two categories. The first is that anyone with access to a credit card can participate in the funding. And what we do for business owners is pretty much anyone can get in touch with us and say, we want to raise money for our business and we'll work with you. You don't need to have a credit check. We don't have to go through some of the institutional funding loops that tend to exclude certain business owners from that financial system.
That's great. So when we spoke, you were just about to launch your first campaign, which was successful. Talk to me a little bit about that and how you've sort of already expanded to do a number of them now.
Yeah. I'm laughing thinking back to the butterflies feeling when you and I first spoke.
Yeah.
Janelle, we had just pressed go on the first campaign for $180,000 for Mamala's.
Huge. I remember being like, wait, did I misplace a zero there? That's $180,000. And yet you guys hit it. It was amazing.
Yeah, we did. It was great. And I think it was just a testament to communities and communities in Boston, specifically in the Boston area, who just want to do something great for the people that they love. And Mama's has a really strong community. And we've seen through the kind of 10 plus campaigns that we've launched since then of other really strong communities. And we're just thrilled to be able to be a conduit between those businesses and the people that really love them. Come July, we're going to be launching a handful of more campaigns together that are all women and minority-owned businesses, really, really vibrant, amazing products and spaces and people. So stay tuned for that. And if anyone's listening and wants to contribute to live campaigns, you can go to newmarket.co.
And that's NU Market, right?
newmarket.co, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And one other piece of this, which I thought was really interesting, was that, I'm talking with the business owners, Rachel at Mamala's. She mentioned that, funding sources right now are really tough for small businesses. It's really hard to get a loan. And so going non-traditionally and finding outside ways to drum up cash in the coldest hard way to say it. I mean, I think that, particularly in light of COVID right now, it's just been a real challenge for people to find ways to finance their business. I mean, what is the typical ask that people are making? 180 was a big number, but what are people seeking at this moment?
Yeah, we tend to see an average of about $30,000 right now of what business owners are seeking. And, we are a good source for funding. We're not the only source for funding. We want to just be a inclusive way for business owners to find maybe that first check that they need or an additional amount of cash to grow. But we do hear, anecdotally from certain business owners with their business model, they get laughed out of banks. Yeah. And that's kind of a direct quote we've heard a few times. And at the same time, they may have thousands and thousands of customers who have been calling them and emailing them saying, we want more of what you do. Can you come to our town? Can you expand your business model? So it's a very interesting time right now to try to grow a business.
That's great. Well, I'm going to actually use that as a jumping off point to switch over to Karen, because she's been working on funding as well, getting people the help they need over the last year. So Karen Kelleher, Executive Director of LISIC, which is a local initiative support cooperative. I think I got that. Karen, thank you so much for joining me on this. You've been a huge resource this past year as I've been talking with you about the rollout of PPP and other state level grants, and helping me as a reporter connect with lots of small business owners to sort of understand just how difficult it's been to get through this and some of the challenges that have arisen with actually accessing these funds. Maybe if you could just tell me a little bit about LISIC for those of you who are watching and may not know about the organization. LISC, I'm calling it LISIC again, sorry, LISC. And she's the executive director of LISC Boston, which I should preface this because it is a national organization. So Karen, I'll let you do the talking since I'm
doing very
Great.
Janelle, thank you so much for the invitation to join this conversation. I'm excited to hear from Jada and Ross. LISC, which as you said stands for Local Initiative Support Corporation, is a national community development support organization. So I run the Massachusetts part of the organization, and we do a variety of different things supporting community development, which includes affordable housing and workforce development and other forms of economic empowerment. But today we're talking about small business, and we've spent a lot of time and have made a lot of commitments to small businesses, particularly those that are most poorly served in our ecosystem. And during the pandemic, that's taken a lot of different forms. It actually started with raising money to make direct grants to businesses that were struggling. And it quickly turned to something you're referring to, Janelle, which is trying to address the fact that the PPP program, which was the federal government's solution for small businesses, was a flyby for minority-owned businesses in its first round. And that program was a $900 billion program. So together with other leaders, and in this respect, I'm here speaking for a coalition of literally more than 100 organizations, we came together to try to make sure that we got a different outcome in the next round of PPP. Yeah. And we were able to work with over 2,000 businesses that came to us for help with the PPP program through a coalition of partners who were providing technical assistance and connections to lenders who were willing to make those loans. We helped about 1,000 of them get PPP loans that will be forgiven. It's probably $15 million. Wow. But we also, LISC specifically, created an accelerator program to help businesses in a deeper way to get through the pandemic. We worked with 50 different businesses over the course of last year with our partner, the IXL Center, which is actually an innovation consulting firm, who helped us co-design a program to help businesses pivot in the pandemic to meet a completely changing market, to develop digital tools so that they could better access their customers, even though they couldn't be together, and expand their customer markets. And we've now pivoted that program to be a digital growth accelerator, and have just completed in 2021 our first class of 30 businesses who've gone through that with a goal of doubling your revenue, because we doubling your revenue, yeah, wow. Which is an ambitious goal.
That is ambitious for sure. Talk to me a little, I mean, I'd love to just hear an example or two just of some of the organizations that went through the accelerator programs to sort of help understand the scope of what you were able to help them accomplish.
Sure. There's so many examples to choose from, but one of my favorites, you and I have spoken about, Janelle, before, and I think you put them on the front page of the Globe, it's Wiley's Cafe, yep. Which really was shut down, and their traditional revenue from live music has been completely non-existent for over a year. I'm really happy to say I'm not authorized to, but I've seen them say publicly they're reopening in August. But you know, they needed to have alternative streams of revenue during the pandemic, and so they came into the program to try to figure that out. They made a plan to do a couple different things, and they basically created merchandise that they sold online. They upgraded their website, created that e-commerce platform. They started doing live streaming of music for virtual events, and LISC was thrilled to feature them and one of their bands at our annual fundraiser, our Story Slam, in the fall. And that business has actually come back to the digital accelerator, and the owner said, you know, I was stunned. We actually did these things we planned to do, and now I want to do more because I see that my business wasn't resilient. And I want to build something I can pass on to my children that will be resilient. And that is a business that's been in operation since I think 1943 as the first Black-owned club in Massachusetts. That's amazing. So that's one example. I can go on, but I don't want to take too much time.
No, that's great. Why don't we have Ross and Jada join the conversation, and then we can talk a little bit more about resiliency and you know, what businesses really need to do going forward. I mean, I think, you know, obviously we've been looking back now over the last year about the support you've each provided small businesses. And I think for a lot of us now, you know, we're contemplating going back to the office. You know, we're able to go back out without masks if we choose to. You know, we're able to return to some semblance of normalcy. And yet for small business owners, this is not over by any means. I mean, can you give me a little bit of a snapshot from what you're hearing from the people that you're working with directly, just about, you know, the hurdles that they still have to overcome to get through the next few months, the next few years ahead? Karen, do you want to? Yeah.
I can start because I'm fresh off of working with 30 businesses.
Sure.
You know, building capacity takes time. And a lot of businesses use the pandemic when they maybe weren't able to be as active in their businesses to build capacity, but they're really building on that and building on that and building out their ability to access new markets and use the digital tools they've learned to use. And so there's that. There's a need for financing. You can't grow without financing. And I love Ross's model, crowdfunding model, but not a donate, hashtag not a donation is a great hashtag, but every business at early stages, somebody takes a risk on you. Someone gives you money, someone lends you money without looking at your credit, without needing collateral. And not all businesses access that kind of support in the same ways and to the same extent. And so filling those gaps does require financial support. And when we talk later about financing businesses, I can talk about some ways that people can support that. But there's a need for financing.
For sure. Jada, do you want to take that on?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I've been hearing is staffing has been a large challenge, especially with that building capacity. Like you can build up your infrastructure, you can build up any of the software, digital, et cetera, even your space. But if you don't have the people to work there every day and to kind of support what you're building, it can be tough. And that's one thing that I've been hearing is that staffing has been a large challenge, especially for small businesses looking to grow. I know a lot of small businesses do tend to rely on friends and family, especially during this time when they're just starting off, and those are the people that they trust and they don't have to take too much risk on a new employee. But once you get past that stage, you want to have somebody that can build with you and that is invested in the growth of that particular business. And staffing has been one of those challenges.
Definitely. It's something we talk a lot about right now in our business meetings, for sure. Ross, any takes that you're seeing from the businesses you're working with?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about going from sort of COVID pivot to permanent and what that means. So we've spoken with a lot of business owners who have been cooking out of their home kitchens, doing meal delivery, figuring out what to do over the last 6 to 12 months. And now there's this question of what's the first step? Do we sign a lease? Do we look for funding before we sign a lease? To Jada's point, how are we going to staff up and have that security to know that when we do press go on this more permanent environment, are we going to be ready? And so there's a little bit of a give and take there of what step to take first and what types of risks to take on given the constantly changing climate right now.
Jada, did you want to weigh in? Or
Yeah, I just wanted to add one thing to that. I think one thing that I've seen, particularly in the Black business community, as we saw kind of that surge of mainstream Black business support, a lot of people did staff up. A lot of people kind of invested in resources to support that demand. But as we kind of see the year chime on, you realize that support isn't as consistent and it's hard to predict and hard to plan out your future of inventory in terms of staff, even in terms of staffing. Is this sustainable? And are you going to be taking a major risk? Even though you saw a lot of growth for the year, is this something that's going to be able to continue, or was it a trend or something that will change?
Yeah, I'm curious, Jada, to that point. I mean, obviously it's easy to hashtag something or to sort of, have people feel inspired by, when there's protests in the street to do what they can. Have you seen have you seen a consistency over the past year? Did things pick up again around, the anniversary of George Floyd's murder and, now with Juneteenth? Do you feel like there's a real willingness to make this a permanent thing in terms of supporting Black-owned businesses, or is it, another hashtag that we're going to move on from? And I fear it will be, but I hope, the work that you're doing will make that more sustainable.
Yeah, I think that we'll always see kind of those ebbs and flows during those, I guess, consumer moments as they've turned into, which is a little terrible, but they have turned into consumer moments, and I think that they will continue to do so. I definitely think that we saw a very large uptick in kind of that support and in terms of that around June of last year, when a lot of people were investing But I think that one of the things that I try to drive home is adding products and adding businesses into your daily routine so that it doesn't have to be you thinking about, okay, supporting this business. It's like, okay, I already have businesses that I use every day, every businesses that I go to for my coffee, that I go to for like my facial products, like things that are already ingrained into your lifestyle that you're going to continue to need moving forward. So I think that I definitely have seen kind of that mainstream drop off, but I have seen kind of those more sustained or like systemic issues or discussions that are happening right now of like, how can we adjust this? How can we make sure that there's some consistency here?
Yeah.
I'd like to speak a little bit to the need for that systemic change. There has been a real interest in helping entrepreneurs of color get through the pandemic, but what we need much more of is a long-term commitment, because we have such systemic gaps. I mean, that capital gap I talked about before, it's estimated to be about $574 million annually. That's just annually, not on an aggregate basis over a period of years. And so the organizations I mentioned before that came together around pandemic relief for businesses of color have created a permanent coalition called the Coalition for an Equitable Economy. And it's really targeting creating an equitable business ecosystem by 2030, which is incredibly aggressive and requires a lot of buy-in at all levels. And so it's why I want to talk about it, because you have a great audience at the Globe that brings all kinds of capital, financial, political, and interpersonal, right? These businesses need to be better supported, and they need consistent access to professional business support. There are these amazing organizations all over the state that are providing that support and have been essentially first responders during the pandemic. And it's, Doug Ling on my own team who gave away like countless weekends and nights doing workshops for people, and Chris Hunter at Leaf, and I could go on. I shouldn't call any one of them out because there's like 47 of them that have been consistent over a course of a year, showing up all the time to do that work. Investing in those organizations is something the state has been doing and increasing this year, but that needs to keep happening. Those organizations are mostly nonprofits, and they got to raise every dollar to pay the salaries of those folks. We're trying in the coalition to build a stronger ecosystem where all those resources are better connected, where we leverage each other, which is something we really were learning to do during the pandemic, where the businesses we work with are connected to each other for business to business contracting opportunities. I don't want to go on too long, but I do want to encourage people to check out the website for the Coalition for an Equitable Economy, which is maequitableeconomy.org. And join the mailing list. If you want to support these businesses long-term, plug in there for advocacy opportunities, financial opportunities, and ways to be a part of the long-term strategies.
That sort of is a perfect lead into my next question, which is, obviously we want to think about how we as consumers can take part. So, that means supporting small businesses, but to your point, Karen, like also kind of looking up through the food chain and seeing where and how organizations that are doing this work can be supported. I'd love to hear from you guys, other action steps you think we as consumers can take to ensure that equity is foremost in our mind in terms of supporting small business. Because I think, I'm the retail reporter. I've seen Amazon's profit margins over the past year, right? Like lots more people, who are not feeling safe to go outside their homes, we're happy to click, and we saw that really take off. So how do we recalibrate things to, with consumers to ensure that they can think, hey, I'm going to go local first?
It's a great question. Of course, none of us has the bold strategy already in place, but you got to go look for it. And we who are building the ecosystem, and like Jada and Ross and the businesses that they're lifting up and those platforms, we need to lift them up higher and make them as accessible as Amazon is, so that people can easily, in the way that Etsy has done that for creatives, we need to do that in a broader way so that it's just as easy to shop from those businesses as it is from Amazon. Maybe Amazon needs to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. I think that there's kind of two sides to it, whereas like this visibility and this ease and access, putting resources into doing that, but then also that conversation around, yes, not everything's going to be easy. Not everything's going to be at the click of your fingers. Like that's the whole point, is that you're putting effort into something. You're putting effort into seeing small businesses grow, seeing local businesses grow. Yes, there needs to be more visibility around a lot of the initiatives that are happening and even the businesses that exist. But on the other on the other side of the coin, we as consumers, we need to do our part to seek out opportunities, seek out ways that we can support businesses and just integrate them into our normal lives.
Throw out some other opportunities for businesses of color to lift their profile. The Get Connected Marketplace by Colette Phillips Communication. She has a marketplace that is free to join. It's easy to create a profile. Also, the Boston Business Journal recently went through, they published a new list of the largest minority-owned businesses in Massachusetts. You'd be stunned how small some of the businesses on that list are. It's a great resource. It should list a lot more businesses. We have, I think, 14,000 minority-owned businesses in the Commonwealth, and there's only 100 there. So
Oh, wow.
get your business listed if you're one of these folks, but also if you're in a position to kind of reach those networks, put that information out, help people get access to those resources, and then use them. If you have a contract that you're putting out, do the outreach, do the work. You have to disrupt your existing business relationships to actually do, the kind of contracting that is inclusive. You're going to have to change something about how you're doing business. And I know there's a cost to that. There is a cost to that. There's a risk to that. It has to be taken if we want to create a different future.
Right. Ross, do you want to weigh in on that one too?
Yeah, I'll chime in a little bit just on this idea of for consumers to seek out vibrancy. And I don't think you can find that on Amazon in the same way you can by going to local businesses. You can't find the amazing head wraps that Tafari Wraps makes when you go on Amazon. You can't go find the amazing ice cream from Reasons to Be Cheerful, or that one-to-one interaction you get when you go and buy that. So if we all seek that out, I think it'll lead to a more local and equitable economy. I know it's easier said than done. Amazon gets everything to your door within a day or two. But if we've recognized anything over the past year, it's taking away that vibrancy really makes a difference in our lives, and we can all kind of bring it back in and help that grow.
That's great. So I'm sure all of you have noticed that there's a mayoral race happening right now in Boston. I would love to ask each of you, what steps would you like to see the new mayor of Boston take to help support small businesses in the city? Karen, you mentioned, contracts, which has been a big task. I'm sure that's one of them. Are there other things that you think would be good for the new mayor to take on?
I guess my job is going to be to think ecosystem level in this conversation. So Jada, Rosh, you got to come in with a little more on the ground stuff, but there's a lot of recovery money coming to the city, and this applies to the state as well. Hundreds of millions of dollars. It's a generational opportunity to make investments. They need to be made with equity at the top of the list. And I would specifically encourage the new mayor to invest at least 10 or 15, $25 million in creating flexible financing in partnership with community development financial institutions and alternative lenders who serve underserved businesses, so that they can get the financing that they need to grow, and the business support, which does require public or private funding. It needs to be financed until a business gets to a point where they're able to finance their own business support.
That's great.
Definitely, capital should be a main priority, and then an equitable way in terms of accessing that capital. And then also, if the funds run out, what is the next step? Still, because a number of times there'll be grants that go very quickly. You go to the landing page, we're no longer accepting, et cetera. But can we still find a way to support businesses on that landing page that people are coming directly for support? What are other opportunities out there? I think collaboration is a big thing. taking stock of the resources and the community work that's already happening, at the city level, to acknowledge this work that's already happening, and then to create collaborations, create opportunities to work together, where at the city level, you're at the height of where people are looking for information. So if you know that LISC is doing something, or is Newmarket's doing something, I think that there still is that opportunity at the city level to direct people to these resources, and to have forums, active forums, where you're encouraging businesses to come together to create community, for whether it's a community job fair, whether it's a community grant fair, creating opportunities where people can come with that vibrancy, where maybe it's a community event, but there's still those resources and more of that happening on a very regular basis. I joined a development around the upcoming parcels that are out for RFP right now. And I thought it was a good opportunity because it really broke down the development process for just the everyday person. Like, what is this something that you're going to need if you want to be a part of this conversation, and really broke it down so that people can aspire to it. Maybe you won't be ready for this particular RFP, but you're going to think, okay, this is something I could do. I have kind of the steps. And I thought that that was a really nice initiative that a number of people partnered on, LISC, including with the city, to provide support resources, not just the opportunity to do something. Because sometimes, even with the PPP loan or even forgiveness around them, those documents are full with so much information that if you're not aware and you're not able to kind of comprehend that, or you have the team that can do it for you, you're just as you have just as less access to it as somebody who would understand.
Yeah, I think those are all fantastic points. I have a less exciting one now to share, and that's in permitting. The permitting process is such a roadblock for so many business owners in so many ways. I won't get into all of them that have been shared with us because it would take up the rest of the hour. But the amount of time it takes to go and get a permit to put one of those sandwich board signs on your sidewalk, or to get more outdoor seating, or to be able to have live music. We all love live music. They create vibrant communities. To make that more possible for more business owners and faster, I think that would be a huge, but not maybe as an exciting change for policymakers.
I could pivot on that. The City of Boston adopted the first fair housing overlay to the zoning code in December, and it has actually an incentive to create affordable retail or commercial space as one of the things you can do if your project is not advancing fair housing adequately. So I'll encourage the new mayor to use that. And I do want to just lift up some positive examples of things people have done since the pandemic that I'd love to see more of, which is the state put out a lot of grant dollars for small businesses. And it started with $50 million, and the governor and Larry Andrews at Mass Growth Capital and Secretary Mike Keneally at the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, they put equity at the front of the list of things they needed to do with that money. The first $50 million went 95% to minority-owned businesses. And they ultimately found another $650 million and put out almost $700 million, of which 43% went to minority-owned businesses, which is in stark contrast to the PPP program, which I know I spent a whole lot of time and a whole coalition of people did. We got a lot more results from our partnership with the state on those programs. So I'd love to see, and the City of Boston has been very focused on equity in their resource allocations.
That's great. Yeah, no, that I remember those equity numbers coming out at the outset and just being like, it's so impressed and thinking about how that was prioritized, and really glad that carried through the whole grant process overall.
Can I shout out a private effort too that I think is really exciting?
Yeah.
A group of corporations and civic leaders came together right after the pandemic hit to provide pro bono business support to underserved businesses. It's called Small Business Strong, and it's basically free business support. It's 5 or 10 hours, and it's powered both by the kinds of organizations I've been talking about, but also corporate volunteers who want to contribute to helping businesses through this. It was led by Ron O'Hanley at State Street Bank. I won't name all the partners because there are many, and LISC is very pleased to have recently become the program manager for that service. And it's now going through, sort of what will it be going forward when it's not about pandemic relief. Though there are still some pandemic relief programs, and Mass Growth Capital continues to create great ecosystem building programs. There is right now a grant program up to $5,000 for digital capacity building that's available, as well as a crowdfunding platform where you crowdfund the first half and the second half will be matched with a grant from Mass Growth Capital. So those are both really helpful pilot programs that can be accessed through technical assistance providers around the state.
Off the sort of notion of innovative programs, I'm curious if just in the line of work that each of you has been doing, if you've seen programs outside of Massachusetts or outside of Boston, or the way things are done elsewhere that you would love to see here, that can we bring it to Massachusetts, that in new forms of supporting small business or getting corporate involvement or other things of that nature.
Well, I wish I could say I got out more the past year and a half to see different examples.
That's true, given.
But have spent some time in New York where I think the flexibility for outdoor spaces to provide new lines of revenue has been really tremendous to see. And it's definitely not perfect, and at times it's messy, but it's given a lifeline to a lot of businesses in a lot of different areas. So I'd love to see that continue through a longer season in Massachusetts moving forward, and maybe expanded in different ways using public spaces in what we would consider non-traditional ways.
I think I wrote a front page story for the Globe about asking if we can be a winter city, and I don't know that we've answered that yet, but I'm hoping that we can get there. City of Boston was like, we just figured out outdoor dining, give us a little bit, but I'm hoping we can continue to have that innovation approach, which I think kind of this pandemic, as incredibly difficult as it's been, has really forced everyone, from corporate down to the smallest small business, single owner, to really think differently about their approach to business. I mean, it's one of the tough things, of course, we've had to navigate, but it's also, I think, to your point, Karen, that you made earlier, like Wiley's coming back and saying, we want to think more. We want to keep this going. I mean, if there is, I hate to call it a silver lining, but if there are things that come out of the pandemic about people's willingness to take risks and think about their business in new ways, I mean, I think that is hopefully something that people are more willing and open to, if they've been either a long-time business owner or if they're just starting out. Talk with me a little bit about some of the things you might have seen just in terms of people's willingness to take those initiatives.
One comes to my mind. One of the Main Streets providers had told us, like, before the pandemic, they did a e-commerce program where they were able to provide a free e-commerce platform to the businesses in their district. This happened to be in Greater Grove Hall, but they did it in multiple districts. And the business owners in their districts really didn't see the value of it. Their customers walked in through the front door. They knew them. They didn't feel they needed access to customers from other places who can reach them digitally. The pandemic changed that. It also made it hard for them to get the benefit of some of the things that were happening, like the gift card purchasing that Ross mentioned. If you don't have any online presence, it's not possible to do that if you don't sell gift cards. Yeah. If you don't do delivery of your product or your food, someone in a community that wants to support you can't access your product. So there's that. But after the pandemic, all businesses understand the power of a digital platform to help you access your existing customers, build a stronger relationship, sell more creatively, but also to access new customer bases that can drive your customer base and give you that resiliency, because you have a diversity of products, or you have a diversity of customer bases.
Do you have any? Oh, do you have any tips to, what steps business owners can take to drive customer loyalty, to sort of help invigorate those communities that maybe, to your point, Karen, we're really kind of walking in through the door, but, when the door is shut, it's really tough to connect with them. What are some of those significant or, innovative approaches you've found just in terms of businesses able to access that customer base in new ways?
Think of some of the folks who've accessed whole new markets with digital tools. I'm thinking of a wig shop and salon that started during the pandemic because they weren't welcoming customers into their salon. They really pivoted to online sales of their products, started doing online advertising that was targeted at their client, potential clientele, and their sales went through the roof.
Wow.
It's one example. Packaging of products into like loyalty packages or paired products has been popular, so that somebody who likes one product tries another product.
Mhm.
Partnering with other organizations, other retailers, but also maybe institutions to get your product out. One of our accelerator clients is Meal Mantra, which produces Indian sauces. And Meal Mantra during the accelerator decided to target food service, like sort of B2B food service companies that produce meals in bulk. And that has the potential to really grow their business quickly if they land a few of those contracts. And within the accelerator program, they made connections, set up appointments, and are starting to try to build those relationships so they can completely, change their revenue profile. So that's some examples. I'd also like branding partnerships where you associate yourself with somebody who has a strong brand and you're bringing something else to their brand. I think for right now, Black-owned businesses, Latinx-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses in general, there's a lot of desire to be supportive. And so sort of you're bringing something to the brand of a larger partner while they're bringing something to you and access to their customers. We have one business from our accelerator, it's called Ivy's. It's a cosmetic line and a gourmet honey line. All the cosmetics have honey as a basis.
Oh, wow.
She's a chemist. The entrepreneur is a chemist. They actually hired influencers to use their products and put out social media messaging about them as a way to expand their customer base. And the research they did in the accelerator helped them see that their customer base was actually much bigger than they realized. They were reaching across the country.
That's great. Jada, do you want to share any examples?
Yeah, for sure. I think that like better together and collaboration model is definitely something that I've seen a lot of like subscription boxes and maybe you don't have the bandwidth because a subscription box takes a lot of logistics and time, but you have a great product that you can incorporate in that and that turns into wholesale orders. So things like that I've seen a lot of, which is great. I know it's still new, but the Be Local app that the city of Boston recently just put out. I'm excited to see kind of like how it gets adopted and grows from there. But I think that's a great opportunity for visibility for the businesses on a great platform that they've invested a lot in terms of the way that it looks and user interface and things like that. So I think a lot of those like collective better together resources where you're contributing what your business does best and you leave the more maybe it's technical or you leave the more resource heavy things to someone else that has it. So I've seen a lot of those doing really, really well.
That's great. Ross, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I feel like this question is almost an advertisement for the work that we do, that Jada does and that Lisk does, which is great. I think the question is also kind of why we started New Market, to create more customer loyalty and more of an opportunity to meaningfully connect with those businesses. But one great example of that better together that Jada mentioned is what May has done in collecting different sort of filled foods, I guess you could say, businesses together. So they were doing boxes. Yeah, exactly. It was dumplings from May, empanadas from Buenas, knishes from Mamala's, and that opened up access to all different types of customer bases, really all over the country now. So that collaboration is amazing, and we've seen more and more of it since COVID hit.
That's great. I do have a question for a reader and or from someone who wrote in, but if you do have any other questions, please use the Q&A box. We have about 5 minutes left, so we'll see how many we can fit in. But this one coming from earlier, and it says incubators and crowdfunding are both very viable routes to increasing a business's visibility and intended earnings. But once the funding has been raised and businesses have popped up in high trafficked, well curated space, what's next? How does Black-owned Boss and Newmarket continue to amplify these businesses that follow their model of brand awareness and growth? So is the commitment beyond, the sort of the period? What's the long-term look there?
Definitely. I think so. The current model right now is really that pop-up surprise and delight, really what Black-owned Boss is taking. And I think that it's connecting new customers to a new to new businesses and businesses to new customers. So it's like you can't maybe visibly see the changes that are happening right there, but in those conversations and more of those qualitative like sentiments that are shared of like, I got a deal from a law firm that ordered 300 of something because they came to the market, or I got a long-term contract for something, or I was able to connect to get a lease for a long-term space that I'm now able to continue on into the future. So there's a lot of those that I've seen, and that's really the goal in terms of the partnerships and even the locations where the markets are held, where it's like you want to create these opportunities for long-term growth and for customer growth. Whereas a market, it's great because that is a concentrated time where everybody's promoting it. If there's 30 businesses are promoting it. Black-owned Boss is also promoting it, and the partners are promoting it. So you're getting that as kind of a marketing push. Whereas if you transition to having your own brick and mortar store, an everyday Tuesday at 2 p.m. is not going to look the same as that market. So I think both experiences have value, and it may not happen immediately at that market. It will, because of the traffic that happens sales wise, but those long-term connections and those customers that you build are really the goal there.
That's great.
Yeah, I want to become a viewer, not a panelist. As Jada knows from our conversations, I just love the work that Black-owned Boss does so much. But I'll chime in kind of how our model works in creating a little bit more growth after the funding is sent. So every month, as a contributor, you get an email from us that lets you know you have more credits to use and an update on the business. And so it does drive, as we've seen so far in our early days, more engagement, more interaction between the business and the customer. Today, as an example, we get to send an update on a business that'll be opening in the next few weeks and let people know that you'll be able to walk in the doors very soon. And that just little every now and then connection point ends up making a pretty big difference for people who have raised their hands and said, I love this business. I want to support it more moving forward.
That's great. Well, we are approaching our end here. I think we're about at the hour mark. So I just wanted to say thank you to all three of you for joining us and for all the work you've been doing. I mean, it's one thing for me as a reporter to reach out and say, hey, give me all your thoughts and ideas so I can quote you in a piece, but to just know and to see and see how you're each interacting is really it's really, I think it's just a testament to how hard each of you have worked. So I want to say thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time today. A few of you have asked about whether we can share some links that we've mentioned over the course of this last hour. So we'll try and send a follow-up email to the attendees with some of those links provided. And if you have ideas for future panels or anything from a follow-up perspective, I'm easy to find. It's just janelle.nanos@globe.com. So feel free to reach out to me with story ideas. And I'm sure any one of our panelists would love to hear from you too. So thank you all for being here today. And I look forward to when we can actually do these in person again. But I appreciate your time. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you, Janelle.